animators and artists, and welcome to this Toon Boom interview. Pitch This is a competition where 10 artists pitch their ideas for an original animated series to a panel of platform executives, as well as the animation conference's attendees, including potential buyers and financiers within the industry. We've invited Azarin Sohrabkhani, an industry director at the Ottawa International Animation Festival, and Heath Kenny, Chief Content Officer at Mercury Filmworks, to discuss the Pitch This competition and their advice to anyone interested in pitching an animated series. Heath, Azarin, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Excited to be here.
So I wanted to start really simple. Azarin, what is the Animation Conference and the Ottawa International Animation Festival?
Yeah, so the Ottawa International Animation Festival has grown into the largest animation event in North America. We are a competitive film festival, Oscar recognized, and categories in our competition include everything from features to independent narrative shorts, experimental shorts, series, kids content, VR, and we have kind of 3 tiers of programming. So one is our screenings, which I just mentioned. One is professional development, and within that, we have multiple kind of levels. So stuff for emerging folks and then professional folks. So that's kind of where the animation conference comes in. The animation conference is well, when it's a physical event, it's a 3-day event that's run alongside the festival, and we kind of bring together, it's a trade forum, and we bring together content creators to Ottawa, and there are panels, there are pitching sessions, one-on-one speed meetings, lots and lots of networking. Ottawa is known for its networking, especially tech. And basically our goal is to kind of foster the growth of animation, not only in Ontario, but in Canada and in the world, and just kind of encourage like high quality content to be made. And then the final track, which we also love, is the kids track. But yeah, that's another story.
I was personally so excited that I had a chance to attend TAC in 2019. But Heath, why do studios like Mercury Filmworks attend TAC?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, like the sort of the easy answer to that is like obviously recruitment, right? Like most studios are going to attend these, specifically this event, because they're looking for new recruits or to reconnect with folks that they're trying to convince to come back into the studio or to jump ship or whatever they may be doing. So it's a recruitment thing first and foremost, I think. But in saying that, I feel like there's an increasing understanding for the importance of connecting with your community, and certainly for us at Mercury, it's a big part of that, right? And I feel like you can't create independent content in a vacuum. You need to get out and see what other people are doing. You need to get a sense of what the market's looking for, and also you need to look to see how you're behaving and responding as a member of a wider community.
Azarin, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that Heath just touched on, not kind of working in a vacuum. One of the top things that we hear about the festival in general, so all of its different components, is that it's a place to feel rejuvenated and kind of see what your counterparts are doing. When we do school lectures, in across Canada, one of the things I always say is you can see who your competitors are, right? Like you can see who your future coworkers are going to be and future bosses. And it's really important to stay connected in that way. And that's kind of the essence of festivals in general.
Yeah.
So that part is really, really important for sure.
And Azarin, what can you tell our audience about the Pitch This contest?
Yeah, I'll start out by telling you a little bit about how it started. It used to be kind of just 2 folks that would pitch, and there weren't really prizes. We didn't really like the contest element. We just wanted to be able to give feedback. And then for the 40th anniversary of the Animation Festival, Chorus kind of was like, hey, we have this idea, let's revamp it. And so we revamped it to include this mentorship program. So basically, we put a call out, which is open now, and we're looking for 10 of the best projects that we can kind of find across Canada. It is only open to Canadians right now because we're really focusing on bolstering Canadian IPs and Canadian stories. And so we connect these 10 creators with mentors who then help them kind of fine-tune their pitch. If anything's kind of missing, they'll kind of work with them up until September when the live pitch happens. And then during the festival, those 10 folks get to pitch. It's done on Zoom now, or kind of video conference, a different platform. We're going to be using a different platform this year. And so you get to pitch, people get to see it, you get some feedback. And from that, the semifinal jury picks 2 finalists, and the 2 finalists vie for the grand prize, and they present in front of the platforms. So then you're getting notes from and feedback and questions from folks that are, thinking ahead and thinking about, okay, where does this fit? How does this work on our networks or on our platforms? And then the grand prize winner wins $5,000 courtesy of Mercury Filmworks. They're our partners with this entire project and have been extremely supportive. Heath is working with us and doing a bunch of talks around this. So there's going to be some programming that's really going to help folks with pitching leading up to and during the festival. And then the folks at Toon Boom are also, who've been partners with us for a long time with this, are giving away a Harmony Premium annual license plus like a 36-hour online training course. And obviously the other benefit is like you're presenting in front of all these people who will now know your name and know your project. So let's pitch this.
Yeah. So we got a comment asking, is the contest open to Americans? And it's not. But if you are interested in pitching a series, there's some really interesting things that you can learn by watching these pitches. And it occurs to me, too, that many artists who work in animation don't get to see series pitches. So what does a pitch look like?
Great question. Yeah, I mean, we get that question internally at the studio all the time. Like, what is it? How does it work? What does it look like? Like, I would say it's changed a lot in the last, sort of year and a half, and it may switch back. But one thing that's happened is like virtual pitching, right? It's a new thing. So, like in the past, it would be like in person. So you'd go into a studio or into a network, and you'd pitch your project either with slides or maybe even have something physical, right? A lot of people would print stuff out and show that. That's changed now. It's online. And because of the technological barrier, one big shift is that there's a lot more a focus on you as a creator rather than sort of showing some kind of fancy trailer or piece of animation, because there's streaming issues and people can't really hear it properly and they can't see it. So after a year and a half of irritations, everyone's like, look, just show it to me later. Just tell me the story and show me maybe a couple of slides, whatever, but just like tell me what you're doing here and what is the story that you're trying to tell, and then let's have a discussion. So I think like for a lot of our folks here at the studio who are not necessarily used to having sort of like public presentations or discussions like that, it can be challenging. So I think you've got to be ready to have that challenge, to engage with someone that you don't know and field their questions and answer them and dig into it, right? So you have to have all that material already like developed and prepared, but you may not show it all. You may just show a small piece of it and answer questions and then share the rest of it later.
Yeah, I would also add that with a contest like this, the assumption isn't that you have perfectly polished pitches at all. We understand there's a lot of folks that are coming into this for the first time. So content, and like Keith said, clarity is going to be the most important thing. Yes, we're asking for your project info and synopsis and logline and character descriptions and stuff, but keep in mind that we understand where you're coming from, and we know we really, really want to encourage folks from underrepresented groups to participate and to send in their pitches. And we know that, this might be folks that maybe don't have that much experience and can't, submit this gorgeous pitch Bible. That's totally okay. Don't let that stop you if you have a very clear idea and concise project that you want to pitch, because while it's very short, you don't have that much time with your mentor. This is part of the experience, is learning and kind of being given that opportunity to be able to like learn from someone that's been around for a while.
Yeah, I think to add to that as well, Azarin, I think like just to be really clear about like what the opportunity is for you if you do get a chance to work with a mentor. like you should prepare your build up to the event. Be ready to make changes. Like when you present your initial series presentation, be ready to get comments and be ready to make adjustments, right? Because I think if anyone comes in with the thing that they first present thinking that that's it, and then I don't know quite what they expect the mentor to do, but ultimately what we're looking to do is help you elevate that and improve it, which probably means feedback and adjustments and changes, right? So be ready for that and be open to that, and look to come with a list of questions that you want answers to, and really push for your mentor to give you some valuable feedback as well. Make sure it's not a passive experience. It's an engaged, involved experience where you can get the most out of this experience too. And that way, when you come to presenting on the day as well, you're ready to answer questions and you're ready to, put your best confident self out there.
We got a comment in the chat that touches on some of our discussions before the stream. The commenter is saying that they've never pitched before, but what they want to enter the contest, where do they start? And do they need concept art or a full Bible?
Yeah, so for the proposals, we've left it fairly vague and general, so that again, there aren't that many restrictions. If your strength is art and you have some beautiful concept art ready to go, and you've got a really great idea, then yes, that's fine. We don't need full episodes. Maybe just some story beats and stuff are just all we need. And even then, I don't know, beyond 1 or 2 episodes, if it's even necessary. We won't be reading full scripts. So on our website at animationfestival.ca, you can actually go check out what you need. So I'll read it out right now. So it's your project info. So we need a title, genre, demographic, format. That's really ideal because we'll be able to kind of gauge who your audience is, what you're trying to get at, where this could live, right? That's something that you really have to think about. And then the project synopsis, including a log line. So you can look this stuff up all online. There's some really great Bibles online that you can actually reference right now. Some character descriptions and biographies, so we know what the world looks like. You really want to give us an idea of what we're entering, what this is going to look like, and then, like I said, the episode synopses. And then for the concept art, if art is not your strength, what are you inspired by? Where are you taking, what are you envisioning? What's the look? And make this, vision board or of how you're seeing this, right? If you're really inspired by, early 90s, Batman, and, put that in there so that at least there's some visualization as to what this is going to look like once it starts shaping up. And bios bios are really important, and your contact information. Please make sure that is all in there. It's very clear. For bios, just sometimes it's nice to know what you've done. It's nice to know a little bit about you. I don't know. I personally really like it. Not that it makes too much of a difference if the project's really great. Sometimes it's just nice to know about who's behind it. And yes, contact information has to be very clear. And yeah. I think that's
you don't want to get a PDF that has an amazing pitch on it.
Yeah. Actually, I'm going to jump in and add one more thing. Please don't send one PDF, send one solid PDF. Don't send 5 different PDFs. It's just really hard. It creates work for us that is very unnecessary. We don't know what order things are supposed to go in. So send a package. Yeah, just for ease for us, please do that.
Yeah, I think that's the thing as well, is keep it simple. Just think about the people that you're asking to read this. You think about the people you're asking to digest all this information, and put yourself in their place. Think about, okay, how can I make this as user friendly as possible? Because that counts. If someone's reviewing hundreds of pitches or 300 pitches or whatever they are, and they have to go through all these things, if there's one that comes in at number 200 and it's a nightmare to even understand, how is this, where's the start, how do I read this, then you're creating an automatic level of friction there that it doesn't matter how open-minded they are, it's going to be tough, right? So think about that. Just how can I keep it simple? How can I make it accessible? Everything you're making here is you're looking to create a window for someone to see inside your vision for a show.
And I think it's hard because there is a tendency to explore complexity. Like if you have an idea, you're trying to express it to somebody, you sort of, there might be a tendency to go into every little rabbit hole of, well, this detail and that detail and that detail, but it might not be what you need to get someone on board.
Yes, I know, it's super hard. It's a nightmare.
I think that oftentimes when that happens and you're focusing so much on the micro is because you're still really like trying to develop the macro, right? Like sometimes we're like this, you still are trying to figure out the overall kind of vision. And I think that this is a great exercise. Even if you don't submit, this is going to be a really great exercise in being able to have that vision come through.
Yeah, because I think that the number one reason for that is that I think a lot of people get confused with trying to make shows for everybody, which ultimately means for nobody. What you really want to do is like figure out like who is your audience, and once you know who your audience and who you're speaking to is, then you've got a demographic, right? Because I think when people talk about 4-quadrant or demographics and stuff, they get confused. But it's just simply, who am I making this for? Like, what is their audience? You know, what is their age range? It's specifically for them. And then now, what is my promise that I'm making? Is this an action show? Is it a comedy show? Is it a, I don't know, is it horror? Whatever it is. Or is it a sitcom? Or is it a preschool show? Like, identify one simple, clear promise, one clear demographic, and then make sure everything is serving that. Because I think if as soon as it becomes ambiguous and confusing, people like hone in on that, like, you know, and that happens to us all the time where sometimes it's like, it sounds simple, but it's something that's really difficult to say. Is this preschool? Is it bridge? Is it like older kids? Is it, you know, am I trying to make something that's teen or young adult, or like, how am I positioning this? What you don't want to find is, you don't want to find yourself in between two demographics where it's for nobody, and then it gets very uncomfortable. And then everyone's like, well, hang on, so the artwork you've chosen doesn't match the storylines you're telling. The stories felt really sophisticated, but the artwork's really naive. It looks like a preschool show, but you're telling me it's an older kids show. You're looking for clarity and coherence in all things that you're doing.
Yeah, Heath, I wanted to ask you, Mercury Filmworks has a very strong reputation for their production services on shows like Rapunzel's Tangled Adventure and Hilda, but this past year, your studio announced 15 original projects in development. And I wanted to know, what has the experience of helping an established studio develop its own shows been like?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's been an absolute honor to get to join Mercury and start to like collaborate with the teams that are here. As you say, it's a very well-established studio that's worked on some of the most amazing shows that I've seen on television. And we're part of a broader community with studios around the sort of like Ontario region that are second to none. It's incredible to be part of this part of the world and this particular studio. It's amazing. So that being said, we haven't really done a lot of originals. So it's a new muscle. It's a new like process. So the first year or so has been about building process infrastructure, making sure we're communicating with the studio correctly, identifying who our key storytellers are, reaching out and connecting with our community, and trying to build trust. Because I think really creating original content that is opinionated and is taking risks, you need trust, right? So that is also why when we announced 15 projects, the reason why we are pushing so many through at this early stage is because we have to find out what the market is looking for, right? And that takes time, and you have to take risks. So some of the things that we are like developing won't get made, and that has to be okay. And that's the thing that I really try to make clear to everybody is that if 100% of what we're doing gets made, then we're not taking any risks, right? We're not seeking to be a fast food chain. We're seeking to make content that really matters and shows that have a strong voice. So as soon as you decide you're one thing, then you're saying no to a whole lot of other things, right? So sometimes you won't fit, you won't find a home. But as long as we're doing the best version of that show we can, it's okay. And so that's our kind of philosophy, is that what we want to do is we want to like bring shows into the studio that we really believe in, that have a strong story to be told, champion that, get behind it, and then see if it has a home. But we don't want to start saying, oh, the market's got this trend happening right now, so we're going to develop a show about blue shoes, or next week we're going to make one about potato chips. Like that, in my personal experience, doesn't work. And also, we don't have the infrastructure to do that here. You know, we don't have a massive distribution team. We don't have a licensed merchandising team. You know, we don't have the teams that are going to exploit it in that way. Other companies do, but we don't. So I think also it's about just being honest about who you are as a company.
And more broadly, if someone is interested in pitching a show, what is your advice to them?
My advice to them initially is to ask yourself why. Like, why do you want to pitch this show in the first place? There's a lot of like content out there online, and kind of all over the industry right now. So you want to be sure that you know why you're doing this, like why you want to make a show, because it's long, laborious, and challenging at the best of times. And to be a showrunner or be a director or whatever it is that you want to be, or become a writer, or you want to make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons, because like I say, it's challenging. And most ideas do not become concepts, and most concepts don't become fully financed shows, and you have to understand that that's a very real reality of the business. And that's something you want to be honest with yourself about. And if you're just genuinely someone who wants to tell your story and has to tell that story because you feel so passionate about it, then I think you should just go guns blazing and give it your best shot. If you're looking to get rich quick or to make yourself famous, there's probably better ways to do that. It's not the easiest way to do that. And I've seen people have great success on YouTube and other sort of social media platforms, and then not quite find that fit in the commercial world. So I think just be honest with yourself. Why do you want to do this? And because then if you can be clear about why you want to do it, and you can make that an ask, if someone does connect with your story and they want to collaborate with you, then you can make that a clear ask. I'm doing this because I want this. And then maybe, just maybe, you'll find the right partner that can help you achieve that goal.
I do have something to add, actually. So it's really great. We talked off, at the top about taking advantage of events and kind of pitching, and this kind of goes with what Heath was saying. So if you are going to, let's say you take advantage of Fast Track at the animation conference, which is a speed pitching, and you can set up meetings with folks from boutique studios all the way to the broadcasters and platforms. Do your research, right? So going back to what Heath was saying about knowing your demographic, and do your research. If you are pitching, an adult series that's got nudity, and you meet with someone from, Nick Preschool, that's bad, right? That is not, you haven't done your research. That first impression is not going to be great. This is about sparking relationships and building long-term relationships. So make sure that you do your research going in, because not only are you wasting your time, but you're wasting their time and taking away opportunities from other people who would be able to kind of do that. So my recommendation is definitely do your research. Make sure that you are, not like Heath was kind of implying this too, you have to take risks. So I'm not saying it has to, if you go to Cartoon Network, you have to have exactly, a Steven Universe replica, not that at all. But you have to make sure that at least there's some alignment with your show, your project's values, and kind of the goal or the mission or the demographic audience or whatever of the production company or channel you're going to. So that would be my small tidbit about conferences as well.
Exactly. Yeah. I think knowing who you're talking to, not just the audience that your show is for, but knowing who's actually sitting across the chair from you is super important.
Yes.
Azarin, in your view, what are the main benefits of participating in Pitch This?
Yeah. So, one of the big things is that your, the money, of course, just a little bit of money to help you build your Bible. But also, getting experience pitching, being given an opportunity in a forum that's not this, it's not Cartoon Forum, right? This is somewhere where we're giving opportunities to folks who aren't presenting these, these giant, very well developed pitches. Your projects are going to get seen. You're going to start building relationships. It's really hard to kind of get meetings with some of these development execs. So you've got this opportunity to kind of really stand out. And you're also kind of doing something for the community. If you folks know me, they know that I'm all about kind of selfless acts, as much as possible with the animation community and doing things for the community. And what you're doing is you're learning, but so are people. People are learning from you, from your experience. So it's going to be really important to go through that. And it's a little humbling, right? So, like, being able to go in front of an audience like this is very humbling. And it will mean that the next time that you're just sitting in a room with one person or two people, or sitting, at a table with one or two people, you've got it, right? Like, you've got this experience of sitting in front of 500 people and pitching your project, even though this year it's online. It's kind of invaluable in that way. And just exposure, honestly, just getting your project out there. And we talked about this before the call, but being able to show folks that, at Ottawa, let's say you pitch your project in a way, you get all these like great questions and kind of ideas on how to improve it. Then the next time you meet someone at Kidscreen in February, you're like, check in with them again. You've kind of developed your project more. It's kind of going in a better direction. And it's all about that relationship building and showing that progress.
Heath, is there anything that you'd like to add?
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that, especially the part about, like, it shouldn't be seen as a one and done. It's like, this is the beginning of something. It's the beginning of a conversation. It's the beginning of a journey for you as a content creator, or it's the continuation of your journey. But ultimately, for me, I've been sort of pitching stuff and failing and succeeding sometimes, at the same time. You're learning all the time. You have to be learning, you have to be listening, and you have to be ready to show that you have heard and listened and understood. And I think that's the thing. It's like you're part of that pitching experience, because it is really a conversation, is you telling a story, but then another part of it is you listening to what's being told, and you've got to create an environment where the person that you're engaging with feels comfortable to give you honest feedback, because that's the best way for you to progress, is to get honest feedback. So that feedback may not be what you want to hear immediately, but it could be the quickest way to get there.
Yeah, we got a question from the chat. Are writers able to submit a project to pitch this, or is it only for animators and artists?
No, absolutely. Yeah, it's open to anyone who's got an idea. But yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we got some last year with writer-led projects that were really good, and some that are actually selected. So, and like, one thing I said to someone last week as well is that one of the biggest assets that I think everybody that works in this industry has is the community that we work with. And you can, like, if you want to pitch something and you can you have the confidence to share it with others at your peer group and others around you, you'd be surprised who's willing to help, like who would like to get in and help. And sometimes, if you're a writer, maybe you only need a couple of images, right? And that's maybe enough to flesh out the presentation. And you'd be surprised how much you can use and exploit one or two images in different ways to build out a presentation. Like, it doesn't have to be like reinventing the wheel every single slide of your pitch, right? There's ways to use the whole buffalo, as it were. If you get a couple of images together, you can then pull them apart and use them in different ways. So get creative and innovative in the way that you do that as well. But writers, for sure, they shouldn't feel like they're excluded from it.
If you had to give a participant in Pitch This one piece of advice, what would it be?
Breathe. Practice. Honestly, practice in front of your roommates, in front of your dog, whoever. But practice is really, it is really important. Practice with your mentor if you have one. It actually like really helps, and it eases your nerves quite a bit. And something that I've seen to be very successful with Pitch This is trying to really be yourself, and really focusing on that, like being genuine, because you're going to be working with these folks potentially, and they're looking for someone that they're going to be working with for quite a bit, right? Quite a long time, and they want to know who you are. And I think that half of this is selling yourself even. And I gave an example of a pitch that Mike Geiger, who I'm sure many of us know, he pitched Winston Steinberger in Sir Dudley Ding Dong in 2010. And the reason why his pitch always stuck out to me was because, yes, his pitch was funny and charming and like super clear, but like people really fell for Mike, you know, like he was really genuine. And I remember the conversations after of people just like really being moved by the way he kind of was very honest and genuine. So I think that's something that I've taken away over the years with this project.
That's so true about the, you know, rehearsing, like preparing yourself, like you know, I think people imagine that goes away and it's not part of what you have to do. But like even now, like with some of the shows that we're currently pitching right now to different networks around the world, you know, there is time in every week where we're running through the pitch, you know, and every time it succeeds or fails, we learn from that and we adjust and we run through the new version of the pitch, and we're constantly adjusting and tweaking and learning and listening to what the market is telling us. So it's no different for this event. It's exactly the same process. You want to practice, rehearse, prepare as much as possible so that on the day you can be as relaxed as possible. You know, I think that's the big thing, right? You want to be yourself and you don't want those nerves to get in the way. So, you know, do yourself a favor and prepare. Don't wing it. Like it's just not going to work. And then the other thing I wanted to add to that was, in terms of like being yourself, I think that one thing just to remind yourself is that no one has seen this pitch before, right? When you're finally presenting it, the people that you're presenting it to have not seen your 10, 20 different versions of this presentation. They haven't even seen the final version. So what's most important is that you get through it in a clear and concise manner. It doesn't matter if you make mistakes. So you want to do yourself a favor and not worry so much about the results or the perfection of it, and just worry about the clarity and, you know, taking your time and then really putting your best self forward.
Yeah, you mentioned, you know, sometimes pitches are more successful or less successful. In your view, what makes a pitch successful?
Yeah, so my personal take on it is you know, you want a pitch that is impactful and clear enough to get a clear yes or a clear no, right? And the reason why I say a clear yes or a clear no is because I think, you know, what you don't want is some kind of like polite, kind of ambiguous, like, you know, it's great, thanks for coming in, you know, yeah, we really like your stuff, and keep in touch. Because that's not, what is that, a yes or a no? What am I doing here? Do I, you know, what should I do next? That's not very clear, right? So you have to take a chance to put yourself out there in a very clear and opinionated way, where this is this demographic, this is the promise of the show, this is what it is, and this is what I want to do with it, and this is why I'm doing it. Does that sound interesting? Is it something we can partner on? You can start asking questions. If they start giving you feedback, then you can start asking questions and look for, okay, is there a for action or not? And you can even have that opportunity to start giving these people permission to tell you no. Because if you can set that up where they have permission to tell you clearly that this is not going to work ever, like this is not working for their network, it's not going to fit in, or their production company, or whatever that may be, whoever that person is, they can give you a clear no, then you can move on to the next potential home for your show, right? But if you spend 6 months chasing a dead end because you didn't get a clear no, then that's like terribly like expensive for your energy levels, or perhaps even your financial investment. But basically, you really want to get to a place where people can be upfront with you about, like, this is going to work or it's not going to work, and that's okay. You can move on to maybe find a better match for the show itself, because it's really about finding the right home for your show, someone that's going to help you elevate the show to its full potential, right? Or this idea. So you want to get clear presentation that's successful enough to get a clear no or a clear yes. Both are valuable.
And Azarin, before the stream, you mentioned that it's also important to look at proposing next steps. In your view, what is the best way to move on from a pitch? Well, what happens afterwards?
Yeah, actually, it's funny because I was gonna pose this question to Heath, and what his opinion would be, like, how soon after do you follow up, or how soon after, like, do you send a thank you note immediately after? How do you start building that relationship is actually where what I was going to ask Heath. So in my opinion, I think that, you know, I grew up in a house where pleases and thank yous and hellos and everything were always so important. So I think that courtesy is really important. Taking the time to thank someone for their feedback and everything is always important. Like we said right off the top, this is about building relationships, and that's the most important thing. So I think that, you know, they say this about looking for a job and portfolios and everything, where it's like, if something has changed, if the pitch has developed in some way, or if you've taken some of the notes, then I think that they're, you know, following up. This is, you know, based on recruiting, I think, for the most part, but then there's kind of warrants some kind of follow-up about your project. If it's about, you know, hey, I'm going to be in Toronto, do you have time to sit down? And there's a reason why you're kind of approaching them, or if you're going to Kid Screen or whatever it is, MIP or whatever, that's a very different thing. But I think I think I would almost use the same thing, right? Like, it's like, there was some kind of progress. If you've kind of done something with the project and you're approaching them again about the project, then I think it's appropriate. But immediately after, or, you know, a couple of days after, just to thank folks, I think is really important. Heath, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I agree with everything you've just said. I think that's really accurate. The only thing I would say is that I think it was like Seth Godin said it once, like, and I think he was talking about artwork in general, like artists in general. But I think that a phrase that I like to use is the idea of being persistent in a generous way. So this idea of, if I'm going to bother this person, like, what's in it for them? Is this useful for them, or am I just bothering them? You know, so if you're able to get an indication of whether it's yes or no in the pitch, great, you just saved everybody some time. So then you can acknowledge that, and then we can all move on. If it was like, okay, I'm interested, I'd like to see X, well, then of course you want to make sure that X is completed and done, and you can demonstrate that you've done that in the next follow-up, right? But ultimately, if you're going to be reaching out to folks and looking to engage them again about this particular project, again, you're looking to be persistent, but you're looking to be generous at the same time, where you're looking to think, okay, well, how can I make this user-friendly? How can I make this useful? How can I make this somehow beneficial for us as potential partners, right? Because we're potentially partnering up on this thing, so I want to be respectful, and I want to look to provide some kind of value, not just, you know, be completely, you know, egotistical and just be asking, because that becomes irritating very quickly. You got to imagine that some folks at networks are getting hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pitches all the time, right? So they literally just don't have the time. So if someone is overwhelming them with nonsense, then at some point they're going to stop replying because it's just too much.
Azarin, what pitches do you remember from previous years that pitched this?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
What are some pitches that you remember from previous years that pitched this?
Oh man, so many. We've had like everything. And like, I think, you know, obviously the ones from last year are fresh on my mind. Terry Abel did the Silly Duck Wizard, and that was just like so charming. And yeah, it was like, he was charming, the project was charming. There was just so many great things about that project. But I think that I lost my train of thought because I thought about how cute the show was. But the pitches that really stand out are usually ones where they're just really different, and they're you know, it's so there's a ton of shows with ducks, for example. There's a ton of shows with trucks and trains, and I remember one development exec one time said that, like, you know, like, today I had like, I can't remember what era it was, but they had like 10 shows with ninjas or something pitched to them in like a span of like a month, right? So I think that it's always like, the uniqueness is what usually stands out to me. So if there's this like for Terry's project, for example, it was like just this, it was like actually silly, and it was like this like offbeat story that you're like, it mixed like really different, you know, storytelling and experience and sound. And I think that that's what usually stands out to me. And like I said, when folks have like a really great personality on stage, and, you know, one time, I think it's Seren Pereira, who started introducing himself and said, oh, like I'm known for the Golden Girls puppet kind of tour, right? Like it's like he was doing a puppet show. And I remember thinking like, that is like such an interesting, like just tell us about him in a way that made me remember his pitch and remember his project. So I think that trying to be memorable in some way, whether it's through your personality and your project or whatever, is kind of really important. And it's really easy for me to say that from afar, but I think that's what usually works. How do you become memorable, Heath? Do you have any suggestions on being memorable?
That's a really good question. I have no idea. No, but I think Terry's a good example because he has a podcast. He didn't start out in animation. He started out, working in marketing and social media and stuff like that. I think, if I remember correctly, and that all flowed through his presentation. You could see he was very aware of the impact of this online with the digital community. He was smart enough to include that in the way that he was about to do it, but it was all credible in terms of his career path. And his presence online and his who he was as a person. It wasn't stuff that he just added in to sound like he was being modern or contemporary or digital. He was doing it in a way that actually made sense with him. And I think that's the thing, is like I think we are trying to, there is an entertainment aspect to a pitch, to a presentation, right? You are trying to be somewhat entertaining, so there's a performance there somewhere. So, but I think the performance is about playing your best self. It's about playing yourself. It's not about playing another character. It's about dialing yourself up. You're almost caricaturing yourself in some ways, but you're looking to really be like, okay, this is who I am for 5 minutes, and I'm going to give you a distilled version of that, right? I'm not normally this hyper or this, I remember one guy that's just incredible is Adi Shankar, where I had the pleasure of sitting in on a pitch with him once. We were both consulting for a company, and we were both pitching, and anyway, I sat in on his pitch, and he did this thing, which was so funny because I think most people associate pitches with high energy, but Eddie does the thing where he does these ridiculously long pauses, and it's crazy. Middle of telling a story, and he stops, and you're like, is he falling asleep? Like, what's happened? And he just draws everybody in, right, and then carries on with the story. But it's so effective, it's incredible. But it's not a shtick. It's the way he is. Because we went out for dinner, and even when he was telling anecdotes about his childhood and what have you, it was the same thing. He'd do these long pauses, and it's just part of how he speaks. But it became part of how he presented his shows as well. So it's about leaning into what makes you you, and then making that a highlight of the way you present your shows.
Because the show is a little bit of an extension of who you are, especially if you're kind of the sole creator or whatever, right? So
exactly, but I think it really should be, because when you have to make those hundreds of decisions per day, per week, when you're running a show, when you're leading a crew, it has to be instinctually you. It has to be something that's on the tip of your on your fingertips, on the tip of your tongue. It's right there because you've lived it, you breathe it. That's that you know what's right and wrong, because you're instinctually, oh, I don't like that, I like this. You're not sitting there, wringing your hands, racking your brain. I don't know. There are genuine puzzles to solve, but you have a team around you to help you with that, and there'll be work to be done. But you at least you know what you like and you don't like. You know what you're going for. There's a tonal thing that you can share with others, and you can start to grow that community around the show.
Yeah.
It's magic, I tell you.
Sorry, I just want to try out the long pause.
I know, it got uncomfortable for a second. I was like, are you frozen?
One of a friend of our show, Mark Simon, is asking, for those of us who haven't been in a few years, what's new to tech?
Well, it's online.
Digital.
To be honest, 2022 is pretty far away. So I think that we're going to try to navigate the online world first this year. One of the things that we really have been trying to do for years, and I think succeeded quite a bit online, was to really meld the art and business side of our festival, because they really feed each other. The core values are the same. Our mission is the same on both sides. And so what has changed quite a bit is that, all the talks that we do are open to everybody. So if you are a student and you feel like listening to how to finance your film, your TV show, and work with tax credits in Canada, you're welcome to it. Or if you're, president or CEO of a big company or big studio, and you're like, I want to see what like this independent animator is talking, this experimental animator is their processes. So I think that we've really decided, especially with the online, we don't have the barrier of physical buildings where it's like tax exists in one building and films exist in one building, and so we're really able to like break down the barriers like that quite a bit. And I would say that there's a very big focus on trying to foster new voices in the in creating new content and stuff. So we're talking a lot about that, but also connecting them with folks that can actually make things happen for them.
And I just want to mention too that even if you're not in Canada this year, because it's online, you can participate virtually.
Yeah, actually, yeah, there's I mean, especially with all the talks and everything, they're open to the entire world. Anyone can access them. There might be some geo-blocking with some of the films, but for the most part, that hasn't been too big of a problem. There's also fast track, so the speed pitching, if you're not in Canada, but you want to meet with folks. Last year, we had almost double the amount of executives looking for projects because they didn't have to physically come to Ottawa right after things like Cartoon Forum and didn't have to go to MIP right after. So we had folks looking for every kind of content you can think of in the animation world, from features to shorts to interstitials. So I would really check out any of this program that'll start being updated, I think, midsummer. And basically, we help you schedule meetings one-on-one. There is speed pitches, about 10 minutes. And yeah, they're excellent. There were so many great folks last year that you could have met, that people could meet with. So
yeah, and I think also the other thing is that it's an opportunity to contribute, like to make this your own event as well, like giving feedback, like participating so you can give meaningful feedback. Like, I'm always like coming up with wacky ideas about different workshops or things we could do, but ultimately it's really about what's most valuable. So the more we hear back from the community about, I want to see more of this, I want to learn more about that. Like, for example, development, one of the biggest questions around development is how do I finance it and how do I do it and how do I manage my risk? Because ultimately, as soon as we start talking about development, we start talking about risk, right? Because there is a massive risk. If believe what I was saying before about the numbers of success, the risk is high. So how am I managing that risk, right? So, for example, we set up this whole process of pre-development, development, and pre-production. And it's something I explain to various groups all over the world all the time. It's like, this is how we manage our risk, right? And this is how you should do it, in my opinion, because at least you're able to really control the scope of work up front, especially if you run an alignment workshop with your core creative leaders at the beginning, like all the stakeholders. You use that to dictate scope and then time frame, which allows you to manage your initial risk on the pre-development side. Then you can test it with the marketplace, get your feedback, and then you either commit with a partner to move on to the next phase, or you pull the plug and move on, right? But ultimately, it's a way. There are different ways to do this, but it's one way of trying to control and manage risk, right? And there's lots of different techniques and tools that we apply here that we're more than happy to share with our community. But it's a case of like, is it valuable, or are people interested? We need to hear that stuff as well, right?
absolutely. I have a question for Heath. Well, I'm just gonna ask. So
Unorthodox, but I'll allow it.
sorry, it's just because it's a little bit related to what he was just talking about with feedback, and we get this question quite a bit. So for somewhere like Mercury, do you guys take pitches directly, or do you prefer to go through agents? Do you recommend for folks to get agents, or can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we get that a lot here too internally. Like, how's the best way to pitch? We do get a lot of like unsolicited pitches, which generally speaking we don't take, just because our core focus is with our folks inside the studio. Then we do get a lot of kind of context from agents from different sort of official channels. For us to get to take someone completely unknown that we've never met before and take time to receive a pitch, there is a barrier to entry for sure. But there are, you can go through the website, you can go through different channels, and we'll try and get there. What I tend to do is I tend to make sure there's a few questions being asked first, so we can find out, like, who is this person? Have they done something? Like, is there something that we can be of value to them? We try and filter a little bit to make sure that we can manage the volume of stuff coming in, because I can't tell you how many pitches do come in, and we can't often get to them all. Like, that's a big struggle for us, is to try and get to them all, because we do have a small team. Like, we have a big studio, but our original team is very small. So that's the kind of initial engagement. If someone's just coming to us from inside the studio, we will, offer them like advice in terms of, like, they could reach out to this entertainment lawyer, or they could try and get this agent, or we try and set them up so that we can have a healthy negotiation, because I think there has to be a healthy negotiation at some point. And so we want to make sure that it's like done clean, and they're lawyers talking to lawyers, and everything happens in the right way. Because I think that's the biggest thing. That's an unknown thing for creatives when they get into the option phase. Like, what does this all mean? What's the difference between a purchase agreement and an option agreement? And, like, how do I know what's happening here? It's all very confusing. It's all legal language. So we like to go slow, take our time. Like, we always say to everybody, we're open to answer questions and offer advice, but we advise you to get some kind of third-party legal representation so that we can, have these conversations in a structured way, right? And we're more than happy to make this a learning experience, but at the same time, it's good to set up those relationships in a way that's really healthy and constructive. And then for folks outside the studio, generally speaking, they do come with an agent or something like that. So, but I think it's advisable. It's definitely advisable to get an agent or legal representation. But ask around first. Find someone that's done it before. Find someone that's established in the industry. So you're not, because the other thing is, you don't want you don't want let's say, an intellectual property lawyer that's charging you an hourly rate to be overly fixated on details that don't really matter in an option agreement, and then you end up getting billed for way more than you're getting for your option agreement, which ultimately, is kind of out of whack. You don't want to end up in that situation where it's like, oh gosh, okay, now I've got this massive bill to go on this little development journey here, but I'm not even sure what I got out of that engagement, right? So you want to find someone who's actually experienced and someone who knows what they're doing. So and we know a lot of agents that we have good relationships with, and they're the kind of folks that I think are just they serve their clients well, which doesn't mean we always, the negotiations can be sometimes difficult, but I think for the right reasons.
So, Heath, just to be clear, I shouldn't send you an unsolicited pitch right now.
I'll give you one of those.
Okay, all right. That'd be great.
Heath, so something that was interesting that you said, and I think that maybe for some of our younger or more emerging kind of folks that are in the audience, I think that that's interesting. So you were saying that, like, giving advice or how do you feel about that? Like, how is it, how should someone that's just starting out, someone that's not done this before, but they have this great idea, they've kind of started some of the work on it, how do you think the best way for them to connect with someone that can kind of help them develop this if they don't, let's say, get into the Pitch This program?
Well, I think attending the event, first of all, if there's any opportunity for mixers, like being at these, like, meetups or occasions that allow people to connect, and then just start asking questions, like, acknowledge the fact that you don't know certain things, reach out to, another way is to use your talent network, reach out to, like, look online for articles in different, like trade magazines. If you see someone that's had a show optioned by a studio, reach out to that artist via Instagram and say, hey, look, how did you get there? What did you need to do? Who did you reach out to at the studio? What's the best contact? How do I do this? And then you never know if they like what your story is and they like what you're doing. It's already kind of a filter, right? So they might say, hey, look, I'm going to introduce you to such and such because they would love this. So then suddenly you're getting sort of vouched for in a way, and like, there's a lot of simple ways to do it. Like, I remember when I first met Fernanda Frick, for example, who's a really well-known creator. I was at Ventana Sur as a mentor on one of their programs, and in Argentina, and we met at a pitch program similar to this. And she said, under no uncertain terms, that she wanted to make the show in LA. And I said to her, well, I think it's a very big challenge. I think, for you to get over there is going to be very, very difficult, And I said, why don't you start by meeting some of the community? So I introduced her to everybody I knew in Los Angeles. I said, you should I'll send introduction emails, but then you could try and, keep that relationship going, which she did. And it paid off for her. Like she managed to get a lot of folks, well-established people in the industry in Los Angeles. They got to know her. And so that when it came to finally, starting her development journey with Netflix, there were people already at Netflix that knew who she was. So it wasn't like, oh, here's somebody that's come out of nowhere. It's like, not only has she done well with her first film online, but there's also members of our community that know her. So it's like, oh, okay, well, you're part of this community. And so it's easier for us to bring you in.
Yeah, I'm always surprised at how generous folks in this community are when you reach out and ask for advice or ask for help with something, or to be able to connect. It's mind-boggling, and it has nothing to do necessarily with what your position is. It's about kindness, and it's about, you said it earlier too. It's like there some folks like to genuinely help, and folks want to see other people succeed, and so they're benefiting from helping you in some ways. But move in with purpose is what I would say. Like, don't just flail in your conversations with folks. Have a purpose when you reach out. And I think that would be really great. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. And I think to your point earlier as well about doing your research, like if you do get someone, and again, it doesn't ever change. It's always the same. Like there are people that I have aspirations of trying to connect with, but you do your research first. And so if you do happen to get some kind of like opportunity to speak to them, well, then you can talk about something that you know about them or something they're looking for, and you can start to look for opportunities to be generous in the way that you're asking for things. And that is huge. A company that I absolutely adore in London by the name of Us2, when I reached out to their founders, I'd done a lot of research about them before we actually finally connected. And when we did, we had a very free-flowing conversation because I was ready to have that conversation. I was informed about their business. I was informed about how they got there. I was informed about where they came from, and we were able to have a really like valuable conversation, not just for them, but not just for me, but for them also.
Yeah, love it.
As we are nearing the end of this conversation, Azarin, where can artists go to apply to participate in the Pitch This competition?
Sure. Yeah. So animationfestival.ca. It's our brand new website, new design. We got a new logo. We're really excited about it. Thank you, pandemic. You can go to, there's a Pitch This link right on the front page, and we'll lead you to an information page. Deadline is June 15th. You're going to be sending your pitches by web links or PDF. Please, no Word documents or anything like that. Just make our lives simple, please, for the love of God, and send it to industry@animationfestival.ca. We'll accept a maximum of 2 submissions per creator. If you have 3 and they're amazing, fine, but 2 is ideal. At this moment, we're only taking submissions in English, as all the presentations will be in English, but hopefully at some point that will change. And they can target any demographic in their pitch. Trying to think of anything else. Let me reading. Yeah, that's about it. So yeah, animationfestival.ca, June 15th. If you have any questions, send them to sarah@industry@animationfestival.ca.
And Heath, while we have you, where can our viewers learn more about Mercury Filmworks?
Obviously, you can Google Mercury Filmworks, so that's the easiest way. LinkedIn, the website, mercuryfilmworks.com, I believe. Instagram, like everywhere. But also there's a lot of content online. Once you start looking, it's really easy to find. There's a lot of content, and there's a lot of our people that have very large followings on Instagram as well. So we're never really far away. That's for sure. One thing I wanted to say as well, which we didn't talk about, but it was actually Mark's question that made me think of it. I said this in Paris a few years ago, like 4 or 5 years ago. I think one of the best tools, and this wasn't prepared, but I just thought of it. One of the best tools for preparing a pitch is Storyboard Pro.
All right. Well, on that note, that is all the time we have. And if you're interested in getting a 21-day trial of Storyboard Pro, you can find it at toonboom.com. But I want to thank everyone who tuned in for today's interview. If you enjoyed this discussion, you may be interested in reading more interviews at blog.toonboom.com. We recently featured interviews with storyboard artists about the work of storyboarding and artists who work in adult animation on adult animating. And we have more interviews on the way, so keep tuning in.
Thanks.